Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, a very special guest, returning guest, Hans Uter. If you listen to my show, you've listened to some of our earlier talks, and we are going to have episode 10 today of a talk that he started a while back. And the title of it is Advanced Soviet Research on Cybernetics, Biofield, Energetics, and Cognitive Restructuring. So I think it's really important. It's interesting to talk about the Soviet Union. Like they're thinking about expanding the war into Russia. So we don't have too much time left before either the world ends, World War III, or the election happens in about 6 weeks, which could end up being the end of the Republic or the official end of the Republic. Who knows? But anyway, we're going to kind of just wrap this up. So Hans has got a lot to talk about. And thanks a lot for being here. And you can go back and listen to all these shows at William Ramsey Investigates and also at his podcast, which is
Eyes Wide Open. Hans
Investigates. Eyes Wide Open. Yeah.
Sorry.
So check that out. So Hans, welcome back to the show.
Oh, what? Hey, great to be here. Sorry to interrupt you there. Just do a plug. My PayPal, hans@hotmail.com. Anybody wants to support me just so I can get this infrastructure ready because my web guys are being recalcitrant, but we'll figure this out. And
seems to be a common story, actually. A lot of web stuff. I've had a lot of web problems. I don't know. I guess you could go on to Fiverr or something and figure it out. But where do you want to pick up? I think our last point, we went through these slides, right? The egregore and all that. What was our last show?
Yeah, we did. So I'll give an overview. And I thought I'd just start out with just going through my own sort of viewpoint. Some of it intersects with this. It's a conception of social safety is what it's called. And just to reiterate, so this is from very, very high level people in Russia, and very practical people, not just people that are, sitting around cafes or hanging out at Starbucks, taking microdosing psychedelics and thinking they're enlightened or something. Hey, by the way, there's anybody in Ohio, I'm having a cat barbecue. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
How far are you away from Springfield?
About an hour. Dude, I played out there 4 or 5 times, man.
Wow.
Somebody actually, last time I was there, somebody keyed my car, but luckily they put gum. So I have a Lexus. I got a brand new paint job. They put gum on it, but the gum protected the car. So I was like, but it's Springfield, one of those, it's a small town, right? I mean, it's a beautiful old city, but 58,000, 20,000 people.
Crazy. Just dropped in there.
It's insane. And now they're like, I've been seeing the military, like the troop transport helicopters flying over. I don't know what's going on in Ohio.
Wow,
but they're so instead of removing the migrants, right, the Haitians, so there was they had the they're trying to say it's fake. It's not. I mean, it's actually happening. But that's what they do in Haiti, dude. I mean, when I was in India at University of Delhi, they're called the Nagas, right? They're a particular. There's not like the reptilian serpent people, but it's a tribe in Northeast India, and they're they go to college or whatever, but they love dogs. So there was a while, man, these dudes were literally hunting dogs. They have like their bow and arrow, they go like over people's like walled courtyard and take their dog, and they're roasting the dogs on the top of the dorm. So that's just a cultural thing from the Nagas.
Well, I think the killing of the cats, they do it not just for food; it's a ritual thing. It's
Santeria. It's a Santeria thing. Big time.
Yeah, no, it's even worse. Yeah. So at nighttime at Springfield, you should be pretty freaking nervous if you're an animal or a human being, right?
Yeah. Well, cats are known for, being like witches' familiars, also being able to, I'm not saying that I necessarily believe it or not, but even be able to project psychic essence into it. So you sacrifice the cat, you're doing something to the person or the collective people. So, who knows what's going on. It's just a little bit of fun here in Ohio. And
there are people who've been in Haiti this year who say that at night the witch doctors come out and they practice voodoo and do all kinds of stuff. They can hear the drums. Like it's still a practice. Like it's not like something from the 19th century. It's not a joke. So you have to assume that some of those 20,000 people aren't exactly like church-going Christians.
Yeah. Well, there's a guy, this guy has such a big heart. He's like his son got. So this guy, illegal immigrant, Haitian guy ran into the school bus and killed his son and injured a bunch of other kids. And then the guy, he says that, well, I wish he was white because it's racist that he's a black guy did it, an immigrant did it. So yeah, there you go, indoctrination.
Yeah.
Yep,
Cognitive restructuring,
yep,
and they can't drive. They're not from a driving culture with a lot of cars, too.
yeah. Anyways,
There's enough video of those car crashes out there to confirm that.
yeah, well, I was one last little aside here before I dive in, but just because I was wondering, like, who's voting for Harris? Well, I can realize that almost all my neighbors are voting for Harris, man.
Wow.
There's like signs everywhere, up and down the street. It's like, and there's like, have you seen the one, Madame President, the pink one? It's like, I mean, I haven't every single, like, at least for like 4 or 5 square miles, all Harris, man. So
wow, that's
so at least
crazy.
I know who's voting for her. At least they're here in North Columbus. But
well, good luck. Good luck with everything. Good luck
yeah.
with the election and the future of the country and all that stuff. So,
Well, I'm going to be in Turkey at the end of
nice.
October, so hopefully World War III doesn't happen while I'm in Turkey. And I'll miss the election. I'll vote in advance. But anyways, so so before we dive in, I just wanted to. As I was telling the William, and maybe I already said, but this is incredibly dense and complex material. It is, it has its own language. It's coming from a very high level of mathematics, computer science, philosophy, economics, history, etc. And there's a lot of stuff in there, but it is an extremely coherent system, and it's not abstract. It's absolutely applicable to the individual and the entire world, right? So and one thing they discuss is this we probably won't get into this, but the importance of history and how history, politics, I think I wrote down this quote, let me see here, politics, where are we? Okay, history, okay, politics is applied history. So history is an understanding of what was before. It's a collective story of humanity and what will unfold, right? So politics is applied history. The control of history is the control of politics, and ultimately the control of the mind. And so we'll maybe get into this a bit about this crowd elite society. And the crowd elite society is, we are, the mass of humanity is literally a crowd, right? This ties into, you have collective mental pattern conditioning. Look at the WF. This is completely looking at humanity. It's a big block, right? It's a black, they say the black cube or whatever. The black box. You don't need to know what's going on inside. You just need to know how to manipulate it and get the result you want, right? But so the crowd elite society is also very important, but this is what distinguishes is a conceptual power. So according to this system, the conceptual power is what frames everything. This is what gives rise to this is the basis of the conceptual sort of misdirection of the mass of humanity is the foundational aspect of that. So anyways, so this, one last thing before I go into my own spiel here is that, they talk about this matter, information, and measure. So they don't talk about space and time. They go back to Egyptian, for the time of Egypt, right? So Egypt was it was a society that was a strip, right? Everything is along the riverbank. Okay, right. So it's there. And so they were able to establish this type of control he's describing coming from the priestcraft, but also from this level of understanding that you could literally control the entire society. And one of these distortions is the concept of space and time, which actually these are empty categories. They're only relational, right? Time only exists in duration between events. So this is extremely complex, but matter is, all physically existing matter. And they also include energetic matter, right? So this is still an existing entity. Information, and then measure. Measure is the understanding of any particular entity or collection of entities within the matrix of all possible states that can unfold, as well as the sort of the framing, interrelationality, etc. It's very deep. we'll just leave it there. It's based on like algorithms, etc. But it's great, it's quite interesting. I'll get a little bit more into their conception of history here, but it's, again, so they're coming from one of the most controlled societies on earth, right? And we all know what happened when this developed. You had Larry Summers flying over there, absolute devastation, right? Now look at Russia today, right? It's doing pretty good. And supposedly they had given that there was a book, I think it's called Dark Water. And it was the first, when they put this group together and came up with this document, this book, they gave it to Putin and all the top things. Supposedly Putin read it. Then shortly after that, the book was banned in Russia.
Wow.
So it was banned. Yeah, totally banned. So, but it's, when I chanced across this, primarily just for looking at egregores, because like I said, I heard people talking about it. And it's just like, it just seems something was missing in this whole conceptual framing of it, right? So anything you want to say, William?
No, please continue.
Okay, great. Well, so I just thought, whatever. I took a bunch of notes. I'm going analog. I'm doing a lot of stuff on paper now after 2 computer crashes, having to shell out for a new Mac. Wow, a lot of money there.
Money and heartache. There's nothing like computer grief. They have to come up with some kind of like long German philosophical word for it, like Weltanschauung or something like that, because it just causes so much pain, like especially if you lose information or something.
Oh yeah, I had my logic board mess up, so I wasn't even able to back up the computer, and I just moved all my books on there and everything. It was like, dude, I don't want to. I mean, that's like, I'm whatever. But that being said, I'm all good now. So
I just paid that $10 a month just to have Apple, who I don't want to have my information, but just to have an extra backup because I'm so paranoid,
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't know. And the thing is that you want to have multiple backups and always hard copies too, because we don't know, and I do believe it could have just been the logic board. It could have been some, other viruses. I got some threatening ransomware. We will shut your computers down that I found in my spam. And well, it happened, but anyway, since I'm totally clean, like there is nothing on me because it's just, you know what I mean? It's a good way to live. But anyways, so that'll go into here. I wanted just to go over my viewpoint. And I just started writing down some notes, and then we'll dive into the Russian view thing. But, I talk a lot about all these different types of mind control and all these, cognitive warfare, et cetera, et cetera. But, how do I approach life? And then what I think, I don't think that ignorance is a solution, right? You pretend something is not happening. It's not going to go away.
Right.
So I'll just read these points.
Okay.
Spontaneous. So one is life is simple and easy. Okay. Is it? Well, it means that ultimately things are simple and things misdirected effort, right? So easy, you can put in a lot of energy, but it doesn't mean you're putting in a lot of effort, right? So this idea of going for simplicity and ease. Other thing is every day learn, grow, do better, and if you do something is very working well in your life, then spread it out, optimize it. So it's a continual process. As soon as you stop growing, you're gonna stagnate, right? So this is an important thing. Keep learning. And then never fear suffering. I had a quote from Nietzsche about how embracing suffering, enjoying it, the worst. There's nothing, you know what I mean? Be absolutely fearless in suffering, or even though, because then ultimately you not necessarily, I don't embrace necessarily this sort of tragic view of life, like Nietzsche does. But that being said, what was COVID about? People are afraid of some potential suffering, and then they got some real suffering, right? After, they got some real suffering. So don't, avoid things. It's really difficult for me to fix this in my life. I'll have to struggle. Well, all right. Do you want to keep doing the same thing? Don't be afraid of it, right? Okay. Don't always trust. It's just almost like a chicken soup for the soul. I just realized that. So, but don't always trust the science, right? Science does not mean, right? We think science is the end all be all. How many things keep changing in science? Oh, it's this
all the time.
This thing, diet, eat this, don't eat this, do this, don't, you know what I mean? And do they have all the answers? No way. We are what you don't need someone outside of you to tell you if you become clear in your own mind, right? Or you're clear in your perception. So a lot of things are misguided, or even they're subtly misguided. You see this a lot in self-help stuff. You see this a lot in religious, even like say Jiddu Krishnamurti, right? Or there's this guy Yuji Krishnamurti, they both connect with the Theosophical Society. Yuji Krishnamurti, total nihilist, thought is your enemy, mind is a myth, hardcore stuff. I mean, I think some of that stuff I got that stuff when I was quite young. I think it affected me, but anyways, so don't necessarily trust authorities over your own experience, but also know what you know and what you don't know. Okay. And then be clear about what is real, right? What is actually real is what you are doing right now. This is real. This is reality, what you're experiencing right now. You can think about the past, you can think about the future. I'm not saying don't plan, but ultimately these are conceptual constructs, right? The past and the future. I'm not saying just live in the present, but go try to experience what is real. Right? When you're in a situation, if you get emotionally reactive, you are now outside of your own, you no longer have agency. You can no longer direct your will or your actions, right? So it's very important to be able to, so I wrote, the past and the future exist as potentiality, not ground. These are potentials, right? What you do now will create your future. How many people's, their anxiety, what is that? You're projected into the future, right?
Right.
So many of our disorders, and maybe I brought this up because I went to the doctor recently, and then I had to go like huge survey, like anxiety, depression, suicide. I feel I'm gonna swear, I feel fucking great. I don't, but obviously a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
A lot of people are really caught up in this stuff. So break free from that. You know what I mean? Immediate action, direct sensation. Act now. If it's important, you do it, and then really be clear on what you're actually experiencing with clear your sensory channels, right? Have very clear sensory channels. Be able to, and this ties into the egregore thing too, right? We can have distorted perceptions. Most people have these very distorted perceptions, and they're completely stuck in this sort of bubble, their ego bubble. Oh, I can't change that because I'll just dissolve. I'll fall apart, right? So very important. It just takes time, but you can do it, right? I'll just finish the first page here. Use your mind. Use your mind to direct attention. Direct your attention to what's clear and immediate, what's useful. Be able to use your mind, optimize what you're thinking about, not thinking about, right? A thought, if you're worried about something, that's not real, right? That's a thought construct. That's some hormonal responses. It may seem real. It may be all encompassing. It's not. It's a state you're experiencing. So redirect your attention. That's, what I mean? Like, people are so caught up in this endless parade of, you can always worry about something, man. There's no end to it. Don't.
That's true.
And worry and stress are absolutely unnecessary. They are absolutely unnecessary. Even trauma, right? I think this whole thing with trauma, so people get stuck. Oh, I have this trauma. I have a trauma. I have a childhood trauma. I'm not saying people don't, but what are you doing? You're solidifying that. And in fact, this is based on a Gestalt perspective where you have to go into the pain, go all the way through the pain, understand why you feel it. No, you don't have to. You can expand yourself and it will dissolve by itself. So don't get caught up in narratives. Don't, and then, sorrow, sadness, pain. I mean, whatever these things are defined, don't be afraid of these experiences, right? How many people are depressed because they're afraid to experience grief, right? You're depressed because you're not able to really feel the emotion. So that's very important. And then depression is easily dissolved by removing the narrative and clearly recognizing the states that you're in, right? Recognize, how are you feeling? What are you doing at this moment? Once you have that narrative, it's really, this is the control of the media, the control of the cognitive perceptual apparatus of much of humanity, is that you could say it's you go into a narrative. The narrative is much more narrative, I'll go back into history. We'll see, like, narrative it's the past It's the present, it's the future, it's makes sense of everything around you. It's how things are ordered, it's what you can do and what you can't do. It's a definition, but it's also a sort of a flowing definition, right? It frames what's possible or not possible. So how many people and please chime in anytime, William. I'm just
No, it's interesting. I mean, these are interesting points. A lot of people don't realize these states that they're in and how they get themselves into them. And they say that depression is like based on somebody just ruminating all the time inside their brain. So the best thing to do is go for a walk or just get outside of yourself and move around, So
well, that here's that. Well, I'll get this is one thing that my again, this is just my own stuff, but like beta, I think also there's brainwave states, right? So beta brainwaves is supposed to be your awakened, you're basically your awakened, alert, present consciousness, right? This many people it's projected inside. So you get all these things, and even like people ruminating, there's so many layers of thought they don't even know they're thinking. They cannot differentiate it. And then the alpha state is projected outwards. So you're almost living in sort of a dream bubble in the world. And then you're completely in your own projective states. And a lot of the types of thought structures or emotions people have problems with are just based on if you're operating at a high beta and you're going inside your own head, you're going to have stress, anxiety, fear, depression, whatever. So learn to understand your states and learn how to operate your being, right? But obviously, it okay. Anyways, and anger. So anger, I wish my handwriting was better. But I mean, if you are actually angry, use it to give you clear awareness, right? This is you're under a threat or there's something that must be done, but don't get controlled by it, you know. But and then most situations you don't need to get angry, right? The more you get angry, the more of a habit it becomes, and so people, these become poisons, right? Instead of it's like the stress hormone. If you're experiencing a direct threat and you act on it, whatever, then you don't have stress because that's what it's for. It's not for running burning out your adrenal glands over
right.
unnecessary things and defending some idea of yourself that's actually a social construct, right? People like what is transgender? It is a social construct, lack of embodied presence, so going to that. And then let's see, as much as possible, remain calm, relaxed, happy, appreciate your life, lower your, dopamine. That's our reward thing. Lower your threshold. Just be happy. Oh, my dog's smiling. What I mean? Like, you don't have to win the lottery. You don't have to like, do, an 8 ball of cocaine to feel happy. You probably won't be happy. Right. But that's, and before I dive into this CSS, so like, this, but even happiness is natural, right? You don't, if as long as you're not, you know, I mean, people are defined. You don't need to run after anything. Make your own life directly clear. To me at least, it's like live a moral life. It's much easier. Be honest. It's much easier. Be kind. It's much easier. Don't hold on. Forgive, because what does it do if you're going to carry some? I mean, I know so many people. This person did that to me. 10 years later, they're still saying the same thing. They're stagnant in their lives. They're going nowhere, right? So anyways, the only reason I kind of, well, not the only reason, but I have several more pages of this, but we'll shift to the CSS conception of social safety. But a lot of these really described as lower types of human emotions, lower types of responses are also socially conditioned. We can go back to rock and roll, extracting the teenager, right, as a separate category, and then giving them music that distorts the nervous system, right? Creates all this kind of adrenaline, creates all these heightened states. But these heightened states, you don't learn emotional regulation, you don't learn maturity. And a lot of people never get out of being a teenager, right? Adolescent.
Right.
And if you look at, people whether they're CEOs, whether they're characters on Netflix series, whether they're, reality television is a great example. You're seeing this really extremely, this is not the way to live your life. You know what I mean? You don't, I mean, I see all these shows too. People just have these like freakouts. You know what I mean? Like just the actors, they're promoting this. You're watching that. If you haven't integrated yourself, you're going to mirror that and you're going to identify with that person freaking out. Oh, it's cool. I need to freak out. I need to get angry.
Right. You start emulating that, no question.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So anyways, let's the slide here, and I'm going to play a little video. So the egregore, well, you know what? Let's I'm going to go throw this video on here of this this general guy, and then so I think I can just share the video, right? So
you can either email it to me or you can just try to upload it. I hope that it'll play with the sound.
Share screen. Share screen. Right, let me just click on this. Share screen, and wait, there's a video. Okay, I think I got to drag it into the browser. I think I did this before.
I think you do present and then you hit video file. You can just bring up the video file, at least from my end.
Oh, yeah. Well, I just, here we go. I just tried video in my browser. So here we go.
There we go.
So we'll just go ahead and watch maybe 5-10 minutes of this, and I'll try to break this down a bit. So this is again talking about the egregore, and they have this concept of egregorial matrix governance. And, so not, I mean, looking at these psychic energy, psychic forces, collective, things. And this is a lot of what's going on to us here in the West, So here we go.
With today's lecture, we will look at what egregores are and how dozens, hundreds, thousands, and even millions of people have been governed with the help of egregores for a long time. Speaking of the origin of the word egregor, there are several variants.
Okay, I'll just say though. So governance, right? This is the command and control, either your internal self or the society, right? So the governance can actually entail full control, right? And we have the human use of human beings by Norbert Wiener. I've got some quotes on that, but they're talking about, again, this whole thing of like everything from every individual neurotransmitter in an individual to large scale social structures, economic structures. They want to have total governance of this. Okay. But egregores means you're being governed by a non-physical, energetic, or psychic informational form. So let's play this here.
From the word aggregate, which means the connection into one whole of dissimilar or homogeneous parts. The French word is aigrette, which means a feather or a bunch of feathers sticking up that adorn a woman's headdress or hairstyle. What's more, the word egregor has become the property of all kinds of occult teachings. All sorts of clairvoyants use it. But we will look at egregors from the standpoint of the conception of social safety. And here, all that informational, philosophical, ideological arsenal with which we have already familiarized ourselves will come in handy. What are the key concepts that should be kept in mind during the entire lecture when considering egregors? I'll be reminding you of them, but in general, these concepts are: the first is the foundation of the conception of social safety, the trinity of MIM worldview, matter, information, measure. In addition, the passing of information is always a process of governance. Second, you should remember the fundamental concepts of the sufficiently general theory of governance: the vector of goals, the vector of current state, the vector of error, a cycled in closed-circuit system, an object of governance, a subject of governance, feed-forward and feedback lines, stability in terms of predictability, structural and structureless methods of governance, the entire function of governance, and so on. All these must be kept in mind when considering egregors. Otherwise, you may find egregors a kind of abstraction, which is used by all sorts of occult teachings to obscure this word and concept, but they do not give us a clear, precise definition of what this word is actually vested with, and how all kinds of egregors specifically work in our daily life every day. However, this word has to be endowed with a clear measure of understanding. Third, these are the processes that take place in supersystems. What a supersystem is in general, what a supersystem consists of, what kind of elements are included in a supersystem, what characteristics the elements of a supersystem have, and so on. One must understand all these things, and then it becomes obvious that egregors are no miracles at all. Everything will be in its place in one's head, and we will deal with the topic of egregors sequentially. We already know that there is creation. All processes in creation are of an oscillatory nature. Man is a fragment of creation. He also emits vibrations, oscillations, through his biofields. And these oscillatory processes are endowed with some measure. Remember, we said that there is a carrier frequency and there is modulation. These are algorithms for processing incoming information, or a person's way of thinking, his worldview, world understanding. So, a person emits biofields. Oscillations are always a process of the trinity of MIM, matter information measure. Through his biofields, a person perceives everything at once. The sense of measure is a sense, like all other human senses: sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. And each sense perceives a certain spectrum of frequencies. Human eyes perceive a certain frequency spectrum. Human ears perceive their own sound frequency range. We do not hear ultrasounds or infrasounds, and so on. But also a person has the sense of measure, which has its own frequency range. And through the sense of measure, a person perceives all oscillatory processes. Once I had the following experience. I was sitting on a stump in a forest after picking mushrooms. All of a sudden, a chill went down my back. I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything. But when I looked around, I saw a viper crawling in my direction. Another case, which many find a miracle. A woman from the Moscow region had a son who was drafted to serve in the Pacific Fleet. Once she was preparing dinner at home, and suddenly she felt that something had happened to her son. She felt bad. Later, it was confirmed that at that very moment, a misfortune had happened with her son. It should be noted that this case has nothing mystical. The mother was worried about her son and tuned into the corresponding wave of oscillations. And since the material carriers of the mother and the son are almost the same, when the son really had a misfortune, the mother perceived this wave of misfortune. The biocarrier of man's soul in creation is the substance of his biomass, pan-natural physical fields emitted by his biomass in the process of his life. But we do not know the entire plurality of fields. We know that a sensitivity, a resolution, an ability of discernment and recognition by the human organism, that is, the biogenic perception of the world, is higher than that of the means of scientific technological perception of the world. Here is an example. We know that outer space is studied and satellites are tracked. An aerial perceives some signal that comes to it, and this is reflected on devices by the deviation of the arrow. What is the technological base of science like? There are sensors that perceive some processes. For example, a satellite is in orbit. Different sensors detect pressure, temperature, battery voltage, etc. The signal from the sensor is amplified, undergoes various transformations. In particular, it is converted into a digital form. Then the signal is processed on the onboard computer. Then it is converted again and ultimately goes to the register. And a scientist explores the signal sent to a punch tape, or to an alphanumeric printing device, or to a computer. This is how the technological perception of oscillatory processes flowing in the surrounding world takes place.
So just to go through this, so this is very important, right? To understand, say, like the World Economic Forum, cashless society, all these processes are required for the technological, intersection. So every single technological, information gathering process follows this. You I would just keep going just a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm just listening. I'm
Okay.
definitely interested.
Summarizing
It's pretty far out, right? Good.
the aforementioned, everything goes according to the following algorithm: sensor, amplifier, converter, computer processing, converter, register. Man's sensitivity, resolution, ability of discernment and recognition, that is, biogenic perception of the world, is much higher than the technological base of science. Thus, the organism as a whole and its elemental base, cells, possess a more subtle structure, a more complex organization than the technological base of science. Unlike devices, the hierarchy of the structures of a living person is complete and continuous, from the physical vacuum in which physical fields pass along, through atoms and chemical compounds, specific cells that form body tissues and organ systems, up to man himself and society as a whole. In other words, every kind of matter and aggregate states of matter are present in man, and many natural fields, frequency ranges, direction of polarization of fields, code systems, objectively existing in creation are, in principle, closed for technological perception due to incompleteness of the hierarchy of structures of technical means, low sensitivity of sensors, low resolution, low ability of discernment and recognition. That is, due to the crudeness of technical means of converting information, distorting and losing it in that transition from one material carrier to another. Why, by the way, has science not yet recognized the existence of biofields? Since the so-called Kirlian effect is only now being discovered. The Kirlian spouses discovered, according to indirect data, the glow of the hand, that is, the human biofield has been discovered relatively recently. Moreover, the biofield is not detected directly, but indirectly, by the effect of the biofield on the ions that exist in the atmosphere. So the biofield was determined by the glow of these ions, thanks to the photographs that were taken. But it was impossible to take those photographs before, because the technology of science was and is still much weaker than many natural fields. For this reason, the entire scientific world believes that there are no biofields. Our entire culture does not teach our children to consciously and according to the life-consistent reason govern their own sensitivity, resolution, ability of discernment and recognition. In addition, culture does not teach children to distinguish between different cultures of world perception and thinking, and cultivate in themselves a certain culture of thinking and a discipline of internal and external behavior. But some teach this. It becomes obvious if you stretch the thread back to the ancient Egyptian dresses, to shamans. However, such knowledge is not given to ordinary people.
So this is a Russian word, the ancient Egyptian Dratzis. So they're talking about this whole system of control, removing this knowledge and awareness from mankind starts with in Egypt. Now, I was just reading, something about, the Freemasonry, Albert Pike, talking about going back to Egypt. Like this, Egypt is very, very important for this, right? And so we won't go into depth on this, but it's just quite a fascinating.
But he does say that it can only exist in the realm of the shamans, right? So it's almost like you got to take it away from the population and conceal it within selective groups, right?
Yeah, and that's why, see, people go, they go skydiving, they go whitewater rafting, they take, psychedelics, they do this, that. Why? Because they want to have some kind of a state they feel alive. Well, what if you don't need, nothing wrong with what, doing, sort of high adrenaline, bungee jumping. I'm never going to do that, man. But stuff like that, because you're just getting a nervous system simulation, or you're taking a drug. And I took LSD or smoking DMT, and wow, I just saw all these visions. Well, these are just taking place in your own head. You're going to go back to your day-to-day life as it is. You haven't really expanded your consciousness at all, and you very potentially could have damaged your consciousness or your mind or your body. So a lot of these things you don't need these externalities, and they're already present in us. We're just, but it's been obscured. And so that's
intentionally, right? For control, it's taken away. And I think that that's the whole thing about Darwinism and these Marxist views, is that there's nothing special about you. You're just a big lump. And those external, ideas that are beyond your perception, they don't exist, right? Even though they're saying in this document that they do, right? That there's things that just because of inability to perceive or things like that, they don't see it as consciously, right?
Yeah,
but the thing is, using that conscious state, that word.
But the thing is that you can learn to perceive these things, right? And what he was saying in the beginning. So we'll go on here. Yeah. So we'll just continue a bit more, but it's, like I said, and this is just, this is like a vast field. So,
but that's the restructuring. It's the restructuring against I won't go as far as saying divinity, but the latent multifaceted powers maybe beyond the five senses that human beings do have. That's the war. That's where the war takes place, is making sure you don't think you have them, right?
Yeah, and this is how these egregorial forms function and work, because people don't even think they're there, or they're obscured or mystified, right? So I'll just play a little bit more here.
Moreover, these abilities can be independently cultivated if a person truly works on himself. So in society, technology takes domination over an ignorant or a pervertedly educated person. Instead of developing the genetically determined potential, opening the intellectual and creative potential, a person is turned into a mindless zombie by a robot, and artificial intelligence instead is created. Many processes of energetic informational exchange between every person and creation objectively flow, beyond direct conscious perception by people, outside of the technological perception base of science. But the objective non-existence of something and the impossibility of perceiving it directly or indirectly are not the same things. They are different things.
So that's very important, that last thing there. So I don't know if you want to say anything, William.
No, I'm just saying that it's fascinating that they're saying this from that perspective, right? From the Russian perspective.
And from, height of technology, this guy, the general guy who's talking, he has like 4 PhDs in mathematics and physics, and he was running the entire Russian, space program, satellites and stuff like that. So he's not just some, hippie dude hanging out at
he just came out of the ashram or something,
Yeah, they're actually not. And that's one of the things that you see in what's his name? Everyone's seen his videos. Yuri Brezhnev. So Yuri Brezhnev, he talks about how, he was there in India, undercover hippie or whatever. And saying like they're promoting all these types of religion and navel gazing and even like mindfulness, right? People do all this mindfulness, people get into this, and in a sense they're still in their own shell, and they're creating these sort of imaginal states, and they think, oh, I'm so mindful. You're not being mindful, but what you're doing is you're locking inward so you can be externally manipulated, or you're just not taking interest in the world around you and the fact that, you know what I mean, that you're part of it. And so in a sense, and this is based, they believe, they fundamentally say the whole principle of everything is, you know, the supreme governance is God, right? Of everything in the world. So this is, it is a fundamental part of this whole view, but it's expressed very, very scientifically, but it's also expressed in a way that they objectively sort of determined. But this, so again, just to reiterate this. So energetic informational exchange between every person in creation objectively flow. So we're aware of the environment. There's many, many things that we do not consciously perceive, but they're still going on. So they're beyond conscious perception, and they're also outside of technological perception. So this kind of gives hope, right? That even with all this stuff, you know, all their mind control technology, all the, you know, I like that human bio robots, right? Generating all these human bio robots, artificial intelligence, you know, vaccine warfare, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's things that are outside of their powers and potentialities. They are not omnipotent, and they're not all powerful. And certain things they cannot even perceive. Okay, and then this last point, objective non-existence and the impossibility of perceiving it are not the same things. They're different things. Just because you don't experience, you know, this, you know, say entire living presence of the cosmos doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
And just because you can't put it on your, you know, in your, you know, hyper telescope doesn't mean it's not there. Because, you know, going back to that thing, just realize, because people are so, you know, all the same, you know, all the hopefully none of my neighbors listen to the show. I'll be attacked by like the Frankenstein movie pitchfork mob. Yeah, no, but you know, like science is real. Love. I don't know if you see those signs, like love is love. Well, science is, but trust. I mean, science. It's become a religious artifact. Science is now religion. Science is now. It is now like, look at, how do you describe or explain the way people were reacting? I hate bashing the dead horse here of the particular the COVID thing, but hopefully this won't affect your, you know, platform.
It's all right. I'm off of YouTube, so
okay. But
we
you know,
can talk whatever we want. We're actually have freedom of speech.
All right, there we go. Well, that's so. I mean, look at that. I mean, this is like, you can witness this control of complete governance of people, and they think that they are, or just even with politics, right? The way people, you know, that not to bash lefties, even, you know, I'm just waiting. I'll have to get out my AK when the mob comes for me. I'm just kidding, just joking. But I mean, but I'm shocked. Like everybody, you know, all the 4 square miles around me, that's all you see. How could you even consider voting for this imbecile? I don't know, but they get so emotional. Right, people, they cannot, they, you know, like, you know, you see this, right, with, well, how about all these meltdowns people have, right? This
public meltdowns.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, people have these public meltdowns, can't control their passions and stuff like that. So,
or just, you disagree with them, I'll never talk to you again. Right. You're an evil person, or you're not. I mean, people get violent. You have to wear a mask. This is indoctrination. This is like the most. This is really returning to a very primitive state of mankind, right? I mean, it's like, you know, it's like the you know, well, for example, you know, we're talking about, like, say, Voodoo or like Santeria. This all comes from like Yoruba, certain types of, you know, African cults, or whatever, and they're based on types of magic, sympathetic magic, whatever you want to call it. Magic is a different type of technology by other means. You know what I mean? So there's all kinds of, it doesn't mean that this is, it's anything, you know, what, at least we go through here, that you can explain how this is actually happening in a, you know, with this sort of expanded scientific framing. But anyway, so like these rhythms, right? The rhythms, these came into rock and roll. They came into popular music via, you know, Cuba, via whatever. And they brought in, even there's certain beats that were used to, they're used for transposition to summon particular entities, particular collective psychic energies, or demonic entities, right? So I lived with this Himalayan tribe. I studied possession quite a lot, but we're looking at this level that, without mystifying, but realizing, as you said, in a certain way, there is this occult war, and it's very essential to gather yourself and really remove any like my little chicken soup for the soul notes I wrote down. I'll maybe get back to that at the end, but anyways, we'll continue with this. But
Okay.
so yep, here we go.
To put it differently, objectively, there are some processes in creation that are not perceived by either a person or any technological base. In addition, a person is inclined to believe that this does not and cannot exist at all. However, the fact that we cannot perceive something due to the limitedness of our senses does not mean that this does not exist in principle. In relation to the study of mental, psychic, and nervous activity, the conclusion from the aforementioned is the following. If technology is crude and more primitive than man and society, then the best tool for understanding man is man himself and society. As one ancient Greek philosopher said, man is the measure of all things. Technology and computer processing may only be of a temporary interest. These studies are of interest primarily to the zombifiers of mankind, the result of which will be the death of mankind in general for everyone by robotization. Since for the survival of the entire supersystem, it is necessary that as many elements of the supersystem as possible can preemptively detect the present factors on the supersystem as a whole. Then, if people are zombified in mass, they are deprived of their intellectual and creative potential, and hence the ability to detect present factors on the supersystem. Now, let's move on to the definition of egregor. Here is a picture which shows a person emitting a biofield, as well as perceiving the surrounding world through his biofield. Living people, like the rest of nature, emit pan-natural fields. Energy and information according to the measure that predetermines the existence of each and every living being. The set of biofields of biospheric organic origin is usually called a biofield. A person feels, senses, and perceives the world not only with his organs, built from the substance of his biomass, but also through the pan-natural fields inherent to his organism. To put it differently, a person perceives information through his biofield from the entire creation. If a certain plurality of people has similar parameters of their energetics, biofields, vibrations, oscillations, list of fields.
So what's really interesting, this is, and again, we looked at all this research, right? That stuff in the 70s. So this is what's I think is super cool about this, in that this research and understanding is I know maybe you recall in that document there was some quote from like a Russian scientist, because Russia was far ahead of the West in some of these things for sure. But they said we hope that they don't go the dark path, basically, with this understanding and knowledge. But so this is, talking about how to actually create a non-physical energetic entity or whatever, through that just means it's a just one thing about information. So pan natural means, totality, right? Like,
Right.
inclusive. But so how to take a football game, create, going back to whatever's happening right now politically, right? They're creating these type of psychic formations that they can actually control people, right?
I think so.
And so
I think you see it played out in this kind of like political war, right? They're just creating these egregores or whatever, fighting against each other. Some that are totally deceptive.
Yeah, and even brand names have that type of egregores, right, or whatever. But
Sure, right.
but what's cool about this is, we won't get into the whole, because they have, the whole mathematics of it, but they have a very clear understanding of this and application. So there's no mystification here, right? So, but they of course it bisects with occult sciences. But anyways, so we'll just go through this, but this is super interesting. So biofields, parameters of the energetics, biofield vibration. So this is the resolution, this is the oscillations, this is the stuff that you get, the Tao of physics or these kind of new age things, but you get it spoon fed, or else you have to join some cult to get some type of practice that may or may not give you an experience, but that experience is not necessarily just like taking a psychedelic. I saw God. Well, now you got to, now you're getting a fight with your wife, or I'm just saying, right? People think that, anyways, I won't go off that tangent. So we'll just continue. Here we go.
Frequencies of these fields, polarization, etc. Then the biofield emission of the same information by many people generates an energetic informational system on field carriers, which in the occult sciences are called egregors. Simply speaking, roughly speaking, I emit oscillations, you emit oscillations, and if our oscillations coincide according to many parameters, then these oscillations enter into resonance and form a biofield structure on field carriers. Any oscillations carry certain information endowed with a measure. And what is matter in this case? Matter is field structures. Remember, I told you that matter appears in the form of 5 aggregate states: solid, liquid, gas, plasma, particles.
Okay, sorry, just to stop that real quick. So this is where, maybe there's some of these terms, like I said, there's a lot in here, but information, we're not just talking like, information is anything perceived by the nervous system. It's a physical feeling. It's cognitive information. It's sensory information, etc. So information is, you ever watch that show, The Prisoner? Information.
I haven't. I need to watch it again.
Oh, yeah.
Number 4, Mr. 4.
Number. Yeah, it's. But that's a great show. Anyone who's not seen The Prisoner, that's all cybernetics, and that guy kind of really just did that. He kind of put his own money into doing it. The lead actor, he did it, and he never talked about it. He didn't say anything in the interviews, anything, but he has a lot of reveals in that show, The Prisoner, especially connected with this. So again, this exists. It's a matter, but it's a non-physical matter, right? So that's very important to grasp that these field structures. So we'll just continue.
Static and dynamic fields, and also a physical vacuum. These static and dynamic fields are the so-called subtle matter, the frequency characteristics of which are such that they are not included in the light frequency range of a person, so he does not see them. That is, the very human biofield is matter. In order to make the further material easier for perception, an image is given here. You see people, each of whom emits his own biofield, and if their characteristics coincide, then they form a certain common biofield, which is called egregor. And when they talk about channeling, when someone is connected with someone or something else, then it is just about connecting to a biofield, suprapersonal structure. People of art can take information from particular egregors, which they, within the boundaries of measure of their talents, form into something accessible to other people who are not connected to the corresponding egregors, or who do not know how to take information from these egregors. From all kinds of egregors, thoughts suddenly come to one's mind. New ideas suddenly become the property of one's own consciousness, and so on. Classification of egregors. According to the incoming into them information. One egregor has one information, another egregor has other information. In other words, egregors differ in content, according to the features of the energy of people connected to this egregor, according to the features of the energy potential, according to the organization of governance over this egregor. The thing
So what's fascinating here, they're talking about being able to manipulate masses of people potentially, right? Forming this shared thing. And then even where people get ideas and, they're not necessarily their own, but the governance is basically you create. I mean, you can look at, say, I should get a different dead horse to beat besides COVID, but look at COVID. I mean, that is a great example of creating this egregor of fear, right? Of fear, terror, and just being able to mass manipulate this. And this is called egregoral governance, where you, on a psychic, energetic plane, you can manipulate masses of people. And the more and more, the more you are manipulated, the more you become, robotic, basically, or you become, so I think this can explain some of these types of behavior that we see across many, many different people, like these freakouts. You know what I mean? Like there's some of these videos, or I don't know if you notice that around where you live, William, but sometimes there's like one day, like there's so many people just driving like complete maniacs. Like it's just crazy stuff, like unnecessary, trying to get in accidents. I mean, very aggressive, swerving in front, cutting across lanes. And some days I've seen like 5-10 people doing that. Do you notice that out where
Yeah,
you live?
sometimes it seems like it. No question. Another good example is maybe 9/11, like the creation of
Yeah, absolutely.
fear and similar like terror and mind structures and mass hatred, right, for Bin Laden.
Yeah. And so then you see some of this, we call it like even this sort of psychic symbolism. You got the two towers, you've got all this, Masonic symbolism, et cetera, et cetera. So there was also a very occult aspect to 9/11 as well. And that's another, they'll probably get into this. So, okay, we'll just continue just a bit more with this.
is the person of authority often has the quality of a programmer of the given egregor. Therefore, if there is another person of authority from the outside, then the latter can affect the content of the entire egregor and all the people belonging to it, simply by influencing the programmer of the egregor. Moreover, egregors in creation are also hierarchically ordered according to nervousness. If one egregor is higher than another one, then the first one can influence the second, and from a higher level, where the measure of understanding and nervousness is higher, governing impacts are also exerted by this egregor. People are close in terms of the parameters of their energetics, despite the peculiarities of these parameters, and are conditioned by genetics, physiology, general emotional structure, type of psyche, mood at a certain point in time or at a time interval. Therefore, in the formation of human egregors, the informational characteristics, peculiarities of people and the community of people are more significant, but not energy compatibility, which is initially determined by the belonging to a people, race, humanity. After all, look, we are all the same in terms of the material carrier. I mean, we are composed of what we eat and drink, and the informational content of our behavior is different, and it is determined precisely by the measure. Further on, if we talk about the classification of egregors, then human egregors are nested in biospheric ones, which in their turn are nested in planetary egregors, and so on, up to the egregor of creation. For example, the egregor of Russia, the egregor of the USA, of China, and so on. All these human egregors are nested in biospheric egregors. The biospheric egregors are nested in the egregor of the planet Earth, which is nested in the egregor of the galaxy, and so on, up to the egregor of creation. Egregors can be mutually hierarchical. Remember, we studied cycled in closed-circuit supersystems, when one supersystem enters another. The same concerns egregors, when one egregor has some of its fragments placed in another egregor, and the latter, in its turn, has some of its fragments placed in the first egregor. They can complement each other in some part. One egregor complements the algorithmics of another egregor with its part, while the latter complements the algorithmics of the first egregor. Egregors can be neutrally compatible, that is, when egregors are in contact with each other, but nothing happens. Egregors can be mutually antagonistic, that is, incompatible with each other. Well, you probably found yourself in a party of some kind, with everyone having fun, which means that everyone emitted their own biofields. That is, an egregor was formed. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, a new person arrived. He had hardly opened his mouth and looked at anyone, but the situation had changed radically. What was this? It was a carrier of another information that had come and people unconsciously felt it. It was expressed in their behavior. That is, this is an example of the antagonism of the egregors. But the antagonism is determined by conceptions. The same thing happens in the confrontation between egregors of various religious cults.
Oh, okay. So I'll stop the share there. But yeah, so pretty, it keeps going. Like I said, so there's a lot there. It's pretty far, really pretty interesting. I mean, and they have in this matrix governance. I mean, they have, it's not just abstract, in this thing. So this is sort of, again, sort of a positive outlook from the, from all this research, to destroy the.
Well, it is interesting the terminology they're using: zombies of humanity, robotization. Like they're way ahead of their time, and that's it. But there's also something else going on out there, right? So it's something else.
Yeah. And I just, as a side here, I just pulled up this Rosicrucian, right? Rosicrucian philosophy book called The Invisible World, but just to see that, so in a certain way, like, so this, you could say that the spiritual is actually not separate from your material existence. And but with a lot of these things, they're see, egregors also, I mean, you can give people an experience, they have an experience. Oh, I have, I'm feeling this, I have this divine connection. They're people that can control these entities, and they feed people's energy into them, right? And so, but then they're actually being governed, they're being programmed. They talk about programming these types of energetic fields. So consciousness, psychic programming, this is a whole, in one level, it's more abstract. Another level, it's concretizing things that seem almost, that are normally like, you have like an aversion. Oh, this is like, far airy fairy, or you have to go into like, I dance with the gnomes. The gnomes. Pretty soon I'm getting ready for the pitchforks. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not afraid of that. I'm not afraid of them. But I'm just going to read a little bit from Rosicrucianism, and you're familiar with Rosicrucianism,
of course,
right?
sure.
But he was absolutely influential, right? At its time, talking about the Renaissance and things like that, right? And inducting people, the elite, into these types of orders, right? And so, and another thing that they discuss, way, I've read some books, in the 1890s, 1900s, they talk about how that there's etheric channels of communication, right? This is before Einstein got rid of the ether. So that's one of those
interesting things. They're talking about the ether again with the disappearance of, like, was it MH380? Have you ever seen that video where it disappeared?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, no. That one airplane, like, they think it's pretty far out there, but there's some people alleging that it didn't fly off down into the Indian Ocean and crash near Australia. That the ether, there was some high technology that transported it into the ether and back. Like, have you seen the video of it?
I have
Maybe
not.
that's another show. Yeah.
Well,
they're talking about ether and aether, AEITHER, right?
Aether is, ether is basically you could describe as, like in Hinduism they call Akash. Akash, it's like, space or sky, but it's it's a field, but it's an interconnected field. And this is all Tesla's technology was based on ether. Einstein got rid of the ether, and then you know what I mean. So I think at some point they talk about Einstein also, but so you can see
they might have brought it back. They might have figured it out. Like somebody had, like some kind of secret Manhattan project in the U.S. government might have figured it out. So
yeah. So I'll just read a little bit from this Rosicrucian philosophy, The Invisible World. Okay, this is quote from Rosicrucian.
I've got 20 more minutes max, so we're at 1 hour 10 minutes.
Yep, we're doing. Yep. So things that can be seen and handled are permanently real, and there's always a tendency to think that only such things are real. But what if that great invisible world, the world of incorporate beings, in which are the souls of the departed who await contact with the living beings in the material world? To those who do not conceive of an invisible world, it may be pointed out that a large proportion of our human life is now invisible and impalpable. It is invisible to the sense-bound mind, but the sense-bound mind may be more hospitable to the thought of the invisible and non-spatial existence in general. We ourselves are invisible. What is a physical organism? It is only an instrument for expressing and manifesting the inner life, but the inner life, the ego, is not seen. Each person will know himself in immediate experience, and all others are known through their effects. They are not revealed in form. Da, da, da. But they go on and on. With this, what is the aim of all Rosicrucians is to contact this great invisible world and its entities. It is to find a world of reality and permanence in which the true self, the eternal ego, may be known, and in which he may abide in union and concord with all other egos. Are all those people who believe in an invisible living world fools? Shall we designate those beings who have the ability to penetrate their consciousness into a world of spirits mad? If we do, then we deny God and his ministering hosts, for they're invisible but real. So it goes on and on, but there's a very subtle type of misdirection in this. I don't know if you guys are catching that, right? So you're separating, this, you're creating this dichotomy, right? So you're separating the mind from the body, and then you have, creating this construct of the ego, and then you want to encouraging people to go into this astral invisible world to contact these spirit entities, da da da. You know what I mean? To become enlightened. Well, and so this is where you can really, um, get into trouble, right? I think, and then so there's a lot of maybe I'll just last bit. I'll go back to my little chicken soup for the soul. So
let's do it. Let's wrap it up. Let's
right.
do it. I've streamed so many times this week. I've probably streamed like 10 times. Let me figure it out.
Yeah. So I'll just knock this out. Yeah, we're just doing it. So anyway, so I'll just go through this here. So conscious mind. Let's see. I wish I had better hearing. So conscious mind, unless greatly expanded, is buffeted, often controlled by the subconscious, by hormonal processes, and the filtering of perception. So, unlike, like the Rosicrucians, that, you're going to, invoke these invisible beings and go to this magical fairy paradise, right? What I'm saying is that, a lot of things, we don't control a lot of our processes of our body. So the conscious, our conscious minds are not that big, right? You don't want to completely think that just what your conscious awareness at this moment is a totality of yourself. How many things are completely unconscious processes, behaviors? You're talking about like depression, ruminating. What if this is completely obscured from your consciousness, that you're running over? This is what happens with trauma, right? People just run over these loops in their head, but it's blocked from conscious perception. So, so this is me. This is my, like I said, my own ideas. But just to be aware of that, and then start to get more clarity. You don't need to escape from the physical world and your physical body, but you become more and more clear, more and more present, and also be able to redirect your conscious mind. If you're focusing on something that's negative, if you're freaking out, or you're adrift. I mean, look, every day we're different. Some days maybe your executive function is a little bit off, and you're kind of like not, then you work with that condition, but don't just identify with the current contents of your consciousness. They may not even be your own. They may be coming in from outside. The thoughts, right? Thoughts. And also you talk about synthetic telepathy. Combine the technology, with this understanding of these egregorial structures, right? Okay. okay, now keep going here. So live good, lower your dopamine threshold. So, you just, control your neurotransmitter, stuff like that, right? You don't try to take clarity in just your actual day-to-day life. What I'm trying to say is any higher state, higher spiritual, whatever you want, start with your daily. You're the root of your life. You're not going to, this is much, even if you get some great cosmic state and your life is not, you haven't balanced it, it may completely screw you up, right? And that's again one of the dangers of psychedelics. Let's see, live a good life, kindness, personal power, doing your work, doing what's necessary, family, friends, things like don't wait for your life to start tomorrow. Don't think that once I have, my palace and my, my, retinue, my harem and my private jet, I'm going to be happy, you know what I mean? So don't, but value, what you have, be careful about media inputs. Be careful about what you take into your mind, right? So it's one thing to watch something with a critical intelligence to understand it. Another thing just to let it wash over you and not realize what it's doing, right? I mean, have you any current movies? Have you seen that, like Maxine? Do you see that one? Or
No, what's that about?
it's about it's sort of it's about a porn actress who does like sort of this black magic stuff and ends up becoming like ruler of the world, and it's not ruler of the world, she becomes like a superstar or whatever, but it's quite interesting. It's Maxine with 3 X's in it, but there's a lot of stuff, and so this like the sigil, Matt, you probably got into sigils, right? The sigils being embedded like in all the news, newscasts or like corporate logos, like, or like I haven't watched actual network TV for so long. I don't know if they're still doing it, but they have all these fast things, these little weird symbolic things. Sometimes they have all this sigil magic. These are all things, right? These are information inputs. If you're totally unconscious of what's happening, right, then this stuff is really going to deeply affect you. And it, you know, but the other thing, just leave with this, I think that a lot of things like the body itself, once you understand your own anatomy and you don't interfere, you'll be able to move faster, more rapidly, right? You'll be able to act, you'll be more relaxed, your body will heal itself. You don't need to worry. What I mean? You need to, what I'm trying to say is a lot of times people create illness by their thinking patterns too, right? So the body itself, in a certain way, like this is not, we didn't make the body, right? That's what I wrote. We did not make the body. We did, yes, it was produced through man and, man and wife or whatever, or well, whatever. But this is,
hopefully
we can't make a human being. We can't make any real living life form, right? So, and then, so I'll just, maybe I'll just I'll make this book, Hans's Chicken Soup. No,
yeah,
but
that's your next book. Sounds like a good one.
Yeah, but just leave it. Last thing is that, one thing that people get into, I think things get complicated, or people, like they want to have these like psychic experiences. They want to see these invisible realms. I think you maybe don't want to, right? I mean, doesn't mean you can understand these types of egregore stuff. You develop sensitivity, but you don't want to go into this, dimension of all these entities. This is what all people get into black magic or even channeling and this and that. I mean, you have no idea what's going on, and you really. So I think we have sort of a spiritual or psychic immune system if it's not interfered with, right? And we live, we don't have any, major darkness or negativity surrounding us. So I think, I think there's not a lot to fear, really, ultimately, but you have to do the work and you have to develop the clarity, and also not necessarily mystify things. And then also, like I said, just, if some type of psychic or whatever ability opens up by itself, fine, right? You don't need to cultivate these things. You don't, what I mean? You can increase your present awareness, but I just think that a lot of times stepping into these fields, and people don't know what they're even getting into, right? They have no idea. I mean, even, these like rock concerts you talked about, like Astro World or something like that.
Right.
You're walking into this occult ritual, man. And half these people are I mean, have you followed I've just talked to a number of people. They take huge doses of these drugs and stuff, man. It's like, many people. I mean, well, I don't know many people, not some people, and I just think, unless you really know what you're doing, you don't need to go. You can be protected by higher forces. You don't have to step into this world. You don't need to talk to your dead ancestors. You know what I mean? That's all spiritualism, right? What was spiritualism? This is, and so, at least according to the CSS conception of social safety that we kind of, rounded out our journey through Soviet technology with, is that, this stuff has been around for millennia. It's been known about, but it's also been deliberately obscured.
Yes.
And made more magical or mystical than it is, but doesn't mean it's not real. And, but
that's like the perfect conclusion of all this 10 series, is that they've kept it from people and that it does exist, and these higher realms and the attachments are beyond even the brain, because it's your body. It's what this Carillion stuff and all the stuff that the New Agers talk about probably is true. Like, I see your aura. Well, everybody has a kind of aura. It shoots off a different. The human body is much more complex, and there's a lot of different things going on in these realms or whatever, so.
Yeah, and that's, well, I don't.
It's been a great series of talks for sure.
Yeah, I won't
super interesting
go too far into this, but I just say that to understand that you are connected with this, and it is possible to align yourself with, you could say, different types of forces or energies that you don't necessarily need to delve into it if you keep your ground level clean, right? If you can focus on, Jordan Peterson, clean up your room. Well, Jordan is another wacko. Sorry, Jordan, but I mean, don't look at these people. You can't regulate your emotion. You got to regulate, you can't be a friggin' toddler when you're like 60 years old. I guess you can be, but this is a lot of times much more important than trying to go, fly out to the moon when you can't even drive your car along the block. But other things will open, and certain things there are things that will protect you that are far beyond your ability or knowledge. And even the fact of your existence is, in my opinion, is it is celebrate this miracle that you're alive right here, right now, and do what you can. But
and don't give energy to the egregores, the bad ones, right? Don't use these things to give power to those other things that can negatively influence the cosmic, series of spheres, right? And just like the spheres they showed of people, right? Because all that stuff that you give power to has an effect, right? I mean, isn't that basically what they were saying there at the end?
Yeah, absolutely. And one last thing I'll just say is that, as I said, consciousness, this gets very complicated, but I mean, I think that really having clarity, and you don't need to, you develop just the simple presence, and realize there could be things coming in your consciousness that are not yours. They're not from you. Don't identify, right? Sometimes, you get a panic, you get this, this is the free will, whatever. You can change your focus, right? Even if I'm feeling, really super depressed. I feel hopeless. My life sucks. I'm going to go, sit under a bridge and drink Mad Dog or something. Well, I could say that. I mean, you're feeling something. You don't need to identify with it. Retrain your focus. Learn how to do this. It's very important, right? You don't need to identify, because there's a lot of stuff that may be coming in that is not from you, especially it depends on type of social things you're around, or other types of things. We talked about people driving crazy. That could be a type of egregorial influence. So, all right. Well, William, thank you for this awesome opportunity. It's just always
great adventure. 10 episodes. Unbelievable. We did 7 on the dead. So, I mean, great stuff. So I'll put all these, I think, in a separate podcast so people can just listen to them all the way through. And where can people find your stuff? You have your own podcast, right?
Yep, I have. Yep, and that's it's on my website, or will be, and you can find it on. It should be once I get my web designers. I send the the hit team out there to threaten them. I'm just kidding. No, it'll just I don't want to get in trouble. I'm just totally joking. But it's on my website, but it's also you can find it on Sprecher, and then look it up, and I will send you
Spreaker, and it's Hans Uter Investigates, Eyes Wide Open, right?
Yep.
And then your website, and you can see your things
HansUter.com.
going on. And stay away from Springfield, Ohio. Hey, good luck.
Unless you want some fried,
really
cat barbecue.
Maybe that's like a new Diners, Dives, and Drive or whatever. Diners, Drive-ins, and Dives, right? Maybe that would be a good episode.
Yeah, maybe
eating or something. Extreme eating. Yeah. All right, Hans Uter, thanks so much.
Oh, great. Well,
really
just one last thing. I do have a concert, Ohio State University, the brand new music building on the 19th. That's next Thursday, 8 p.m. Free concert. Please come, and I can maybe I'll email you the flyer. And
where is it again?
It's at Ohio State University School of Music. They got this awesome brand new concert hall, so it's pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. So,
and that's Thursday, so that's the
19th of September, and it's free, not a nickel.
There you go, guys. These days, where can you find actual free music? It's unbelievable. All right, man. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, William.
Great job. Yeah. Stay there.